Today, we're diving into one of the most detailed and, frankly, profound maps of the dying process ever conceived. It comes from the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, and it presents the view of death that's not an end, but an absolutely critical, transformative journey. So let's explore this incredible process. Our source text kicks things off with this really powerful line, and it perfectly frames the core idea we're going to be exploring, that the basic stages of our existence, birth, death, and that mysterious state in between, they're not just fixed endpoints. Think of them more like raw materials, like iron, just waiting for a profound transformation. And this brings us to the central metaphor for the whole system, a kind of spiritual alchemy. See, the goal isn't just to understand what happens when you die. It's to actively transmute the entire cycle of existence, birth, death, and that crucial intermediate state, into a golden opportunity for enlightenment. Okay, so check this out. This is the alchemy in action. Through very specific practices, these ordinary experiences get purified and transformed. Death isn't just an ending. It's transformed into what's called the truth body, which is the ultimate unchanging nature of reality. That in-between state, the bardo, becomes the complete enjoyment body, a state of pure, blissful appearance. And birth? It becomes the emanation body, a compassionate, conscious choice to come back and help others. So you're probably wondering, how on earth is such a radical transformation even possible? Well, the source text is super clear about it. The path is a set of advanced practices known as highest yoga mantra. And what's really incredible, a central claim of this path, is that it's believed to make full Buddhahood possible within a single lifetime, not over countless eons, but right here, right now. All right, to really get a handle on this whole alchemical process, we first need to understand the vehicle it happens in, which is, of course, the human body. The text really emphasizes that this particular path is designed for a human born from a womb with a very specific physical and subtle makeup. According to this tradition, our bodies are composed of 6 fundamental constituents. You can think of these as the basic building blocks that will eventually go through that whole dissolution process when we die. And what I find really fascinating here is that there are 2 ways of looking at these building blocks. The first one is elemental, which makes a lot of sense, right? Earth is the hard stuff like our bones and skin, water is all our bodily fluids. But the second interpretation breaks it down by parental origin, saying the father contributes bone, marrow, and regenerative fluid, while the mother provides the flesh, skin, and blood. But here's the thing, the practices of highest yoga mantra, they work on a much, much deeper level. They engage with what's called the subtle body. This isn't a physical thing, but more of an energetic network of channels, winds, and essential fluids that make up the real architecture of our being. This is such a great way to put it. The winds aren't just air, they're subtle energy currents. Consciousness is described as the rider, and these winds are the horse it rides. So that means our mental states are literally carried through our body's subtle pathways. And at death, these winds are gathered up and dissolved in a really precise sequence. So let's get into how this whole thing unfolds. The text describes death as this very precise 8-stage process of dissolution. We're going to start with the first 4, which are all about the breakdown of our coarse physical elements. The process kicks off with the earth element dissolving into the water element. On the outside, the body just loses its strength, its power. The person feels heavy, almost like they're sinking, and their vision starts to get dark and unclear. Now, as the body is failing, there's a corresponding experience happening on the inside. The eye sense, which is connected to that solid earth element, starts to fail, giving rise to this unstable, shimmering vision, kind of like a mirage. For a trained practitioner, this is the first major signpost. Next up, the water element dissolves into fire. Externally, this shows up as dehydration. The mouth and nose get really dry. And crucially, as the body's liquids fail, the sense of hearing just stops. The world literally goes silent. And internally, the visual experience shifts again. With the ear consciousness now gone, the internal sign becomes a vision that's described as looking like billowing puffs of blue smoke. Then, the fire element dissolves into wind. The body starts losing its warmth, usually from the hands and feet inward. Memory and recognition begin to fail. A person might not even know their loved ones anymore. And breathing becomes really difficult, with long, labored exhales. And now for the internal sign that goes with this stage. As the fire element and the sense of smell dissolve, that smoky vision we talked about gets filled with these tiny dancing red sparks, like fireflies, moving through the darkness. And finally, In this first course phase, the wind element dissolves. This is a huge moment. The outer breath stops. All ability to move is lost, and the senses of taste and touch are gone. From a purely medical standpoint, this is the moment of clinical death.
But on the inside, the journey is still going. The vision now is like the clear, steady flame of a butter lamp just moments before it goes out. This means that all the coarse energies that support our normal senses have finally withdrawn.
So even though the outer breath has stopped, the inner process is far from over. The journey now turns completely inward to the dissolution of consciousness itself, which happens through 4 more subtle stages. You know that busy, chattering mind we all have? Well, that starts to dissolve in 3 big waves. First, the grosser thoughts stop, which gives rise to this internal experience of a vast white light, like a clear sky lit by a full moon. Then, even more subtle thoughts dissolve, leading to a radiant red or orange light. And finally, the most subtle concepts cease, and the experience is just total empty blackness. And then, after that blackness, when all the coarser levels of mind and their energies have completely dissolved, the most fundamental, most pristine, and very subtle mind finally manifests. This is it. This is the clear light of death, the ultimate nature of consciousness itself. And this brings us right back around to the whole purpose behind this incredibly intricate map. See, it's not just a description of death. It's a guide for living and a manual for liberation. I mean, it's a fair question, right? What is the point of knowing all these stages? Why chart the appearances of mirages and smoke and fireflies if you're not going to be around to remember any of it anyway? And here is the beautiful answer. The whole point of these practices is to simulate this entire dissolution process while you're alive, to become so intimately familiar with every single signpost, so that when that clear light finally dawns at the moment of death, the practitioner recognizes it. They see it as their own true nature and achieve liberation right there. And even if they miss that chance, this map helps them navigate the intermediate state to avoid a fearful, uncontrolled rebirth and instead choose a future that will be of the greatest benefit. It's about turning the one thing in life that's absolutely certain into the single greatest opportunity for freedom.